You're listening to Freedom Talk Radio with your host Andy Peacher, live from the UK. Email us freedomtalkradio2013@gmail.com or visit us at freedomtalkradioonline.com.
Yeah, very warm welcome. This is Andy. Tonight we have a story about Leonard Lawrence. It's not a good one, but yeah. Leonard Lawrence's story is a harrowing account of his experiences as a pilot who faced fume events. He was diagnosed with mental illness due to chemical exposure. His first recorded fume event occurred on November the 29th, 1991, during an exposure takeoff run where the flight deck filled with hot acryled fumes, causing him and the captain to lose visual reference, experiencing burning skin and difficulty breathing. Despite the emergency landing and evacuation, Lawrence's symptoms persisted, leading to a series of neurological health problems and a legal battle to prove his brain injury was due to chemical exposure. His story highlights the dangers of toxic fumes in aviation and the importance of recognizing and addressing the symptoms of chemical exposure. Misdiagnosed and drugged, the true story of Leonard Lawrence. He lost his family, he lost his home, he lost his job. Yeah. Hope you enjoy this show. Over to you, Len.
The most significant change in aerotoxic has been the publication by the Wall Street Journal. And they've actually blown it wide open in America. And because it's such a significant publication, it's gone global. And following their investigation into toxic aircraft cabin air, Delta have announced they're replacing, I think it's about 350 aircraft, the engines on these airplanes. And Airbus apparently are rediverting the air supplies. So if you now start to look, everything that I and many others have been campaigning against and been discredited, it's now been published. Now, I sent to the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police, Sarah Crew, who was involved in this recent attack on me, and to the Chief Executive of Somerset NHS Foundation Trust, where the mental health nurses who had attacked me are based, and asking them whether they wish to challenge the article in the Wall Street Journal. And I gave the Wall Street Journal its details, and not a dicky bird. It's gone absolutely silent. So aerotoxic has come out, the way they've thrown us all in the long grass, but now it's a global international campaign. Likewise, we're now seeing a lot of military pilots, particularly flying helicopters. They've been poisoned by predominantly carbon monoxide, and which has caused them to have tumours. That's all reaching a peak now. So the whole thing about poisoned air is getting much more widespread publicity. You were right at the beginning of this. You know, when we go back to 2004, you, Kevin Ball, there were so many of us working, but we were being undermined all the time. And one of the interesting things which is often used is a psychiatry and how they attack you with mental health to shut you down. If you're a victim of child abuse or a victim of rape or financial fraud, or he's delusional, he's mentally ill, or she's mentally ill. And this whole issue about mental illness, which you have a lot of knowledge about, this really, really needs to be addressed. So there's not much more I can say about aerotoxic, but if you type toxic cabin air in the internet, in Google, in other search engines, you'll find an awful lot about it, more than what I can say now.
Yeah,
But
I was just going to say one comment on that because, like you said, there's not much. Why didn't they divert the air to these older planes well before this? Stop other people.
Andy, they have known about this since 1955. They knew about the dangers, but economically, financially, it was cheaper to allow it to continue and discredit those that whistleblowed.
Yeah,
And it was only when the Boeing 787 Dreamliner came out, which now takes the air from the wings, the electrical compressors, that there's been a significant change. But with all the publicity now, they're going to have to address it. You go to a doctor and it's very restrictive what he can do. He'll come under bullying from the GMC or other organisations. I believe I'm the only person who's been admitted to an NHS neurological unit at a major hospital and had these neurological tests. No other crew have been given this in this UK. And of course, they proved the damage. And so I'm there. I like I say, I've worked it out, but it's the extent our government lawyers have gone to discredit me, and some within the judiciary and within the police. But what I want to go to is now is, and this is for a lot of people now, when you come into conflict with the police, what to expect, particularly from my own experience in the Navan and Somerset Police Custody Unit. And the present Chief Constable is Sarah Crew. And as you and many others are aware, she's being particularly obstructive at this present time. So what happened? Now, I now know that the attack on me in 2002, the 30th of March 2002, had its origins with the government legal department headed by the Treasury Solicitor, Susan McGibbon. And she had been given instructions from Berkshire Freemason, the worshipful brother, Simon Oliver. That's now been established. Now, the police, even the Somerset Police, were very careful in all their paperwork not to mention these two individuals. Unfortunately, the mental health nurses mentioned Simon Oliver. And in their files, one said I was completely delusional about the call of protection. Another one has said it appears Judge Simon Oliver has held Len under the Mental Health Act. Oliver has held me under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act since 16th of April 2012. But Oliver was never a call of protection judge at that time, and he knowingly conducted the case when he was not authorised. But the government legal department, presently run by Susan McGibbon, the Treasury Solicitor, they have held me under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act since I think it's November 2004. Yeah, that's Sarah Crew.
I'm not used to Zoom, so I'm trying to have a little go.
Now, she's the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police. I'm not just the only case. There's a man called Trevor Meaden and others. And Trevor Meaden was involved in the Lloyd's banking fraud, and I think RBS fraud. And at this present time, it's at her doorstep. The data I'm presently requesting at the moment is what was the full name of the G4S custody nurse who conducted a medical examination on me on the 30th of March 2022 in the custody medical room at Bridgewater Police Station. The nurse, all we know is her name is M. Bell, Bell. She works for G4S. Now, G4S won't give her full name, nor would Avon and Somerset, particularly Sarah Crew, as the data controller, which will enable the Nursing Midwifery Council to question that nurse why on the medical report she filled in, she did not identify the Court of Protection medical certificate, which was held by the arresting officer, WPC Alana Snow. That Court of Protection certificate is not entered in Avon and Somerset Police custody logs, and I'm accused of being delusional about it. Fortunately, I got a partial disclosure, and I got a disclosure of the custody interview tape, and it quite clearly shows the Court of Protection medical certificate there. Now, this nurse Bell, she also didn't write on the medical report that I was in possession of a Headway brain injury identity card. She had denied me access to medication, which affects my immune system, and she denied me an access to a doctor. This is this nurse Bell. Now, had they been successful in detaining me and taken me to a secure mental health unit, the consultant psychiatrist or psychiatrist, the receiving doctor, would have had no knowledge that I had a brain injury and no knowledge of this Court of Protection certificate, because it had all been left off. Now, that is a very fundamental thing which should have been in place on that medical report, but Crew won't release that nurse's name. Anyway, when I arrived, my house was arrested. The police raided my house on the 30th of March on the grounds of malicious communication to Judge Simon Oliver's son and his daughter-in-law. Now, there'd been an investigation into this at my arrest, and it was alleged that I invited the police into my house. And because I wouldn't go to the police custody centre, they arrested me. The CCTV body camera footage, I have the initial part of it, not all of it. It shows very clearly I was arrested at my front door, then Lana Snow and others forced their way into my house. Very different to the investigation. And Avon and Somerset Police professional standards under Larissa Hunt, Detective Superintendent Larissa Hunt, they had denied being in the Avon and Somerset Police were in possession of a Court of Protection certificate. The disclosure of the custody interview tape clearly shows it was in the interview room. They had one. They've been caught and they don't want to speak to me. But what I'd like to tell people, increasingly you're having these type of raids and they don't treat you very nicely. Now, just prior to my arrest on the 30th of March, Avon and some of the detectives in Avon and Somerset Police, I believe it was a detective superintendent, certainly a detective inspector and a local PC, were focused on myself, the Court of Protection and Judge Simon Oliver, and importantly, on Chief Superintendent Claire Arms. Chief Superintendent Claire Arms was the head of operational support at Avon and Somerset Police at the time of my arrest, with responsibilities for criminal justice and police custody. 48 hours after the failed attempt to section me, Arms was no longer in post. She'd been found guilty for the obstruction of justice, sent to the IOPC. They returned it back to Avon and Somerset Police without disclosing to me that the findings against Arms. Now, I got to the custody, I was taken to the Bridgewater Custody Centre. I had a carer with me, and we get there. Then we had a custody sergeant, and I get checked in with this woman, Police Constable Snow and others around. Yeah, he never entered there was a lot what wasn't entered, but I got taken down to the custody cells. I was with a carer. I was held there for about, say, half an hour. Then I was taken for the medical. And this nurse Bell denied me access to a doctor. And she authorized that I could be interviewed and I could be taken away. That was their primary objective, to get me detained under the Mental Health Act so that I couldn't give evidence. And I believe it was in the Javid Sheikh Simon Oliver case. And what happened next, I got back to the custody cell. Then all of a sudden, two paramedics, two males, then later, not long after, a female paramedic arrived at my cell doorway. They weren't paramedics. They were mental health nurses from Avon and Somerset NHS Foundation Trust. Well, that's where they're working now. And for a period lasting almost 2 hours, they goaded me, they provoked me, they smirked at me, they grinned, and they were bullying me. Carly Reynolds in particular was bullying that I agreed to see a consultant psychiatrist. I didn't need to see a consultant psychiatrist. I'd only been tested 4 weeks earlier by a chartered psychologist with an international reputation. You know him, but we won't name him. And I'd also been safeguarded. Even the Somerset Police didn't know that. I was being safeguarded day and night for 6 months before this attack. And I was in contact with the National Crime Agency, and the whole thing was being monitored. Of course, Avon and Somerset attacked me. They didn't want me in a court. And these mental health nurses were absolutely evil. I now have all their names, but the whole thing was to provoke me, to get me shouting, to get me confrontational. But I have a friend, a very good friend. His name is Corporal Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson runs veterans in prison. And about 3 weeks before this happened, Jimmy sent me his book. You see it? Come out a bit. It's called Break Off. And I'll send you a copy of it. What Break Off teaches you is not to get involved in conflict, because that's what they wanted. And in a nutshell, it teaches you to step back, take 2 step backs, realize the consequences of what's going on, and don't engage. And that was the technique I used. And it's very hard not to engage when we've got free mental. And the police were present. Oh yeah, there's one of our friends has done a image, and it's like myself in a custody cell with the Hydra. I think it's the 9-headed Hydra attacking you, and you're on your own. And but what happened? I have a carer. One of the mental health nurses removed her from me, leaving me with the other 2 mental health nurses. I was refused an appropriate adult, and I was refused a headway brain injury lawyer, and I was refused a doctor. And this all went on under Sarah Cruz leadership as Chief Constable, and with Claire Arms, Chief Superintendent Claire Arms, in charge of Avon and Somerset Police custody. Oh, they wanted me absolutely taken away and medicated. Now, having attacked, I can't think of another word, but having attacked me for 2 hours, they left, and then I was taken up for interview. But as we now know, the solicitor Avon and Somerset Police chose for me was a provincial grand officer from Somerset Freemasonry, the officer who oversaw my arrest and my questioning, is also a Freemason of Somerset. I won't name him because he did actually write an apology to me, a letter. He's the only officer who's done so far. And isn't it interesting? We now know the origins for this came from the worshipful brothers Simon Oliver. Berkshire Freemasonry. Now, the evidence which would have cleared me from these allegations was withheld from me by Thames Valley Police, the Chief Constable Hogg and Campbell, and it was withheld from me by Hampshire Police, and it was withheld from me by Avon and Somerset Police. They knew I hadn't sent those emails, but they wouldn't show me the email addresses, neither would they show me the IP addresses. But I've now got a list of all the emails, not from them, I got it from another source, and that will be quite interesting. But the whole scenario is how the police were unable to section me. They didn't know what to do then. So this investigation into me lasted a year, just over a year, and I was cleared of all the allegations. But it's what the mental health nurses then did. Okay, Mar Neyman, Bruce Matthews, Ben McAvoy, and Kylie Reynolds. And they, like I said, they were in the police cell. Now, lots of over 120 people entered my medical records and started to put allegations against me. And these allegations were beautiful. They include multiple threats to attack the public with anthrax. I mean, that's going to get you arrested. It's likely to get you there. That's the Hydra. That is me, Leonard Lawrence, in Bridgewater Police Custody Centre, without a solicitor, without a doctor, the appropriate adult, and these were the mental health nurses and police attacking me. I didn't stand a chance, but I kept calm. I followed Jimmy Johnson's advice, and it got me through it. A lot of people won't. They will snap. And yeah, these mental health nurses then set about to destroy me. First of all, they accused me of, the multiple threats against the public of anthrax. When I became aware of that, I contacted MI5 and passed all the relevant history to them. They were brilliant. They spoke for me for a long time, and I've had no issues. The National Crime Agency have been monitoring it. They're fully aware of it. If I require copies of their files, I'm to ask. And the Met's counter-terrorism unit have been in contact with them, and they're fully aware. But Andy, it was such a dangerous thing to have done to me. And it was done with intent, and it was done to cause me harm. Another allegation, that I'd assaulted my wife and children, and no one's to come near me unless they're in pairs. That was put on my medical records. We will go deeper into this, because when I suffered this brain injury, my wife then went through the process of divorcing me, but it didn't happen overnight. A lot of things were put into place, and in fact, a judge had ordered my wife to leave the house, and not me. Then another thing they put on was it beat up my wife, the anthrax. I am completely I'm delusional about the call of protection. Yet that call of protection certificate's in the police custody centre with the arresting officer. So why the mental health nurse is trying to discredit me? But I'm going to publish that that call of protection certificate. I'm sure Lord Justice McFarlane, the head of the Court of Protection, will have no objections. So they were delusional about the Court of Protection. I falsified a headway brain injury card with the National Police Chief logo. Fortunately, Headway were very helpful. They wrote to Avon Somerset Police, I'm told, Martin Hewitt, who was the former assistant commissioner with the Met and the head of the National Police Chief Council at the time. He intervened. And more recently, Chief Constable Gavin Stevens, head of the National Police Chief Council, he has addressed it. So these are very serious allegations, but they were all based in fiction. And what they were designed to do, when a psychiatrist read all my clinical notes, he was like, wow, this man's dangerous and he needs to be omitted. But fortunately, the consultant psychiatrist, I've never met, he questioned, if Mr. Lawrence was so mentally ill, why hasn't he seen a doctor in the last year? And they were threatening to they did threaten to send a psychiatric crisis team to my house, obviously to tame me, but that never happened. And the chief medical officer, Professor Marion, who's also a consultant psychiatrist, he didn't buy into it again. And all my medical records have been sealed with only 2 people allowed access. But what about the other people out there, Andy, who won't be so fortunate as myself?
Absolutely. Do you think, just a little thing that occurred to me, do you think the M. Bell person was a real person, or at least a real name? Because if you think about it, well, I'm thinking about it. M meaning me, bell meaning ring the bell for help. Was that like a sad name that they just?
No, it's on the custody records. Nurse Bell.
But it's a real person then.
Now the what's it called? Nursing Midwifery Council have asked for the details so that they can question this nurse Bell. But Sarah Crew, the data controller, will not release those details. And it's down to her. She can't hide from this. Now, these allegations, all about me, they were investigated by professional standards. Now, Avon and Somerset, that is quite an interesting department. Before my arrest, a detective superintendent, detective inspector were very much focused on Chief Superintendent Claire Harms, the head of custody and in charge of criminal investigations. Harms had a finding recorded against her for the obstruction of justice, involving myself, Judge Simon Oliver, the Court of Appeal and the Court of Protection. Sent to the IOPC, and they sent it back for a local resolution without informing me of that finding. But what I even had done was, what happened then, the detective and superintendent and detective inspector had no further dealings with the case. They were removed and stepped forward a lady called Inspector Kerry Brickwood, who featured in a documentary with Claire Arms about a man who had been left on Avon and Somerset police custody cell, a black man who was later found to be completely innocent, and he was lying on the custody floor cell with a brain hemorrhage for 2 hours before he actually got an ambulance. And what had happened, his name was Rion. And so the investigation then got deflected. A lady called Abigail Bridger was appointed. She's a civilian assessor in the professional standards department, and she diverts the investigation away from Claire Arms and directs it at Assistant Chief Constable John Riley. John Riley is now the Deputy Chief Constable. Riley wasn't in a position to have dealt with my case or been involved with it. The chain of command went from Chief Superintendent Claire Arms, Assistant Chief Constable Will White, he's now retired, but he appears not to have been involved. And his staff officer wanted to return my computer to me and my mobile phone, but they were stopped from returning them. And but the one who was in a position to remove the detective superintendent, detective inspector, was the then Deputy Chief Constable Nikki Watson. Her full name is Nikki Marsh. She's married to the former Chief Constable of England Somerset Police, now at the College of Policing, Andy Marsh. But Nikki Watson herself was under investigation, I think on another matter. So the key pin was Sarah Crewe. So it had to be the deputy as chief constable or the chief constable who stopped that professional standards. Then we went through a whole string of civilian assessors within professional standards with Larissa Hunt, the detective superintendent in charge, always staying in the background, not wanting to be pulled into it. So she sacrificed all of her civilian employees, and they were just falling on their swords. I'll see one of them, Catherine Vincent, writes to me and denies that even Somerset Police were in possession of a court protection certificate. And the custody photograph shows quite clear they were in position, and they got themselves into a real little pickle. And then they decided they would get rid of it very quickly, and they sent it to the Police and Crime Commissioner, Claire Moody, whose total experience is that of a politician. Anyway, Claire Moody appointed a woman called Sally Fox to investigate. Now, Sally Fox is basically an administration clerk. She's never been a policewoman, never been a detective. And given one of the allegations, well, two allegations involving anthrax, the most serious one, multiple threats to attack the public, why would Detective Superintendent Larissa Hunt transfer this to the Police and Crime Commissioner for Sally Fox to investigate? It should have gone to a counter-terrorism unit at the moment. Well, it has, because it went to MI5 and the National Crime Agency. And of course, Sally Fox come along and shut it all down. But Sally Fox features very much in the Lloyds banking fraud with Trevor Meaden, and the RBS frauds are shutting these cases down. And there was a meeting near Bristol where a large number of victims appeared. And again, it was a whole pattern of how these frauds. But when let's go back to these quarter protections, and that's what they're not liking. It's very easy to get someone detained under the Mental Health Act. As we know, just a private psychiatrist can fill in a form, or a mental health nurse, and you're sectioned. That's a particularly nasty piece of work there. Susan Andrews from BP Collins. She held my quarter protection certificates when she was the head of family law at BP Collins Solicitors. She's moved on. This is going back a good 11 years. They also had in their possession, BP Collins, all my stolen financial records when a cost order of 50,000 was put on me. The photograph you're now seeing is the worshipful brother, His Honour Judge Simon Oliver. Now, he conducted my appeal hearing in 2012 under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act 1983, but he was not a quarter protection judge. He was not a quarter protection judge. He wasn't authorised to do it. He'd also conducted a case, a civil restraint order against another victim. And on that occasion, Oliver announced that he'd been appointed the president of the then Queen's Bench Division by Lord Justice Singer. Sir Brian Leveson was the president of the Queen's Bench Division, not Simon Oliver. But again, in a recent public documentary, LSB Productions, Chris Brooks has just done an interview with a man called Anthony Babelow about fake court orders. And we don't think to look at these court orders. What we should be looking for is a court seal. And a lot of these orders don't have a court seal. Not one of the paperwork regarding myself do we have a court of protection court seal. Now, Oliver was told in 2013 by a High Court family judge to send my case to the Court of Appeal. But the worshipful master, Simon Oliver, had other ideas. What he did, he sent instructions to the Master Bancroft, Mary Bancroft Remmer in the Court of Appeal, handwritten instructions in red ink that my appeal fails, is refused.
Hurry, little children, run this way. I have got a feast that day.
You're listening to Freedom Talk Radio. We're dealing with the real issues because the children shouldn't have to run away. We're exposing the escalating nightmare and ignorance of child safety and abuse. Have you any serious issues with satanic abuse, organised paedophilia, abuse in power in Parliament, victim blaming, exploitation and intimidation, parental alienation, reporting the authorities for abuse, whistleblowers, police, social workers, child sexual imagery, co-parenting with an abuser, a family member as an abuser? We'd like to hear from you. You can email us securely on freedomtalkradio2013@gmail.com.